Welcome to Copilot Podcasts. Nearly 3 in 4 K-12 teachers in America believe that AI will have bigger implications for education than the internet or computers ever did. Not slightly bigger, fundamentally, categorically bigger. That's not a tech company saying that. That's the people standing in classrooms every single day. Today, we're getting into exactly what's happening, how AI is reshaping the way students learn and teachers teach, what the real risks look like on the ground, and what an AI-powered classroom actually feels like in practice. By the end of this episode, you'll understand the difference between AI as a tool and AI as a crutch, and why that distinction might be the most important question in education right now. Joining me to break all of this down is someone who's been deep in this research. Let's get into it. So, where do we even start with something this big?
I think we start with the scale of the shift, because I don't think people fully appreciate how different this moment is from previous waves of edtech. The traditional classroom model, one teacher, 30 students, one curriculum, has been essentially unchanged for over a century. And what AI is doing right now is cracking that open in a way that nothing before it really has.
Right, and we've heard that kind of claim before, though, haven't we? Like, the internet was supposed to revolutionize education, tablets were going to change everything. What makes this different?
That's a fair pushback. And honestly, the difference is personalization at scale. Previous technologies gave everyone access to the same content, better content, maybe, but still the same content. What AI can do is actually adapt to each individual student in real time. Not just the difficulty level, but the learning pathway, the pacing, the pedagogical approach, all of it shifting based on how that specific student is responding.
Okay, so when you say adaptive, what does that actually look like? Like, give me a concrete picture.
So take Khan Academy's Conmigo, which is probably the most visible example right now. It launched in 2024 and has been refined since. According to Khan Academy's own research, it now supports over 20 million active learners globally. And what it does is not just answer questions, it asks probing questions back, it gives scaffolded hints, and when a student is struggling with a concept, it automatically backtracks to the prerequisite skills. When they demonstrate mastery, it accelerates forward.
20 million learners. That's wild.
And the thing that makes that number meaningful is what it's replacing. That kind of personalized guidance, the kind that backtracks when you're lost and pushes forward when you're ready, that previously required expensive private tutoring. It was something only certain families could afford. So there's a real equity dimension here that I think gets underplayed.
That's a really important point, because the conversation around AI in education often feels like it's about elite schools or tech-forward districts. But you're saying the potential is actually biggest for students who've historically had the least access.
Exactly. And the UNESCO Global Education Monitoring Report backs this up. It notes that AI-powered adaptive learning systems can now adjust not just content difficulty, but the entire learning pathway and pedagogical approach based on individual student responses. That's a fundamentally different kind of tool than anything we've had before.
So how does the system actually know what a student needs? Like, what's it picking up on?
This is where it gets genuinely fascinating. Modern systems are analyzing response patterns, how long a student spends on a problem, what types of errors they're making, and, according to some of the more advanced platforms, even emotional indicators. They're building what researchers call a comprehensive model of each learner's needs. It's not just tracking right and wrong answers, it's tracking how you think.
Okay, that's a little bit mind-bending and maybe a little bit unsettling.
It raises real questions, for sure, and we'll get to those. But first, I want to give you another example that I think really illustrates the scale of what's happening. Duolingo, which most people think of as a language app, has AI systems that analyze over 500 million practice sessions daily. And they use something called a half-life regression algorithm that predicts the optimal moment for you to review a word before you forget it. According to their internal research published in ACL Proceedings, that approach has reduced average time to language proficiency by 40% compared to traditional methods.
Wait, 500 million sessions a day? That's not just a lot of data, that's an almost incomprehensible amount of data about how humans learn.
Right, and that's kind of the superpower here. No human teacher, no matter how brilliant, can process that kind of signal across that many learners. The AI is essentially learning how humans learn, at a scale that was never possible before.
So let's bring this into the actual classroom, because I think a lot of people are wondering, what does this mean for teachers? Are they using these tools? Are they skeptical? What's the vibe on the ground?
So there's a really interesting NPR and Ipsos poll that came out just this week, June 5th, 2026, that surveyed 545 K-12 teachers across the country. And the picture it paints is genuinely complex. On one hand, 6 in 10 teachers say they've already used AI themselves for work-related tasks. On the other hand, a majority are worried that AI is making it harder for students to learn to think for themselves.
So it's not a clean pro or con situation.
Not at all. And I think that nuance is really important. Mallory Newell, a senior vice president at Ipsos, put it well. She said teachers feel like this is going to fundamentally reshape the future of education, and they have serious concerns about AI's impact on how they relate to their students and how students relate to each other. It's not just about test scores, it's about the whole fabric of what learning is.
That's a really human concern. It's not will AI replace teachers, it's what happens to the relationship between a teacher and a student when AI is in the room.
Exactly. And there's a teacher in the NPR piece who I think really captures the productive middle ground. Michelle Neighbor, a veteran biology teacher at El Toro High School in Orange County, California, she actually lets her students use AI during certain lessons, but specifically to teach them how to prompt chatbots and then verify what the chatbot says against reliable sources.
Oh, that's smart. She's using AI to teach AI literacy.
Exactly. She'll have students ask ChatGPT to describe an animal's physical characteristics and habitat, and then go verify it. And her point is that the lesson shows students AI still gets it wrong sometimes. She said, and I'm quoting here, "That's one of the things that has to be taught. You can't take it literally."
I love that framing. It's not ban it or trust it blindly. It's learn how it works and where it fails.
And she also uses AI to generate multiple choice questions for assessments. She said that task used to take upwards of an hour, and now it takes 5 minutes. That's the kind of time savings that actually matters. It frees her up to do the things only a human teacher can do.
Although the poll found that most teachers who save time with AI, 63%, say it's 2 hours or less per week. So it's helpful, but it's not like teachers are suddenly getting their afternoons back.
That's a fair point. The time savings are real but modest, at least right now. And I think that's actually a healthy corrective to some of the hype. AI is not going to solve the teacher workload crisis overnight, but 2 hours a week, compounded over a school year, is still meaningful.
Okay, so let's talk about the other side of this, because there's a study that I think really complicates the optimistic narrative. The Oregon State University research on cognitive offloading.
Yeah, this one is really important, and I think it's underreported. Researchers at Oregon State, graduate researcher Rudrajit Choudhury and faculty advisor Anita Sarma found that students who rely heavily on AI often begin using it as a replacement for learning rather than as a tool to support it. They call this cognitive offloading, essentially outsourcing your mental effort to AI instead of working through concepts yourself.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. But here's the part that surprised me when I read about this. It's not the students you'd expect who are most at risk.
Right, and this is the counterintuitive finding that I think everyone needs to sit with. The study found that tech-savvy students, the ones who are most comfortable with technology, appeared more likely to experience the negative effects tied to excessive AI dependence. Not less likely, more likely.
Wait, so being good with technology actually makes you more vulnerable to over-relying on AI?
That's what the research suggests, and it completely challenges the assumption that digital literacy protects you. If anything, being fluent with these tools might make it easier to lean on them too heavily because the friction is lower. You know exactly how to get the answer fast, so you do, and you skip the struggle that's actually where the learning happens.
That's a really uncomfortable idea, because the whole push right now is to get students more digitally literate, more comfortable with AI. And this study is saying that comfort might come with a hidden cost.
It's not that digital literacy is bad, it's that we need to be more precise about what kind of AI literacy we're teaching. There's a difference between knowing how to use a tool and knowing when not to use it. And right now, the second part is getting almost no attention.
And the Oregon State researchers are pretty clear that education is about more than generating responses. It's about learning to analyze information, form hypotheses, solve problems, think critically, all the things that AI can do for you if you let it.
Exactly. And this connects to a broader finding from a systematic review published in the journal Multimodal Technologies and Interaction. Researchers analyzed 155 peer-reviewed empirical studies published between 2015 and 2025. They found that while AI offers real benefits like enhanced learning outcomes and increased student motivation, one of the core challenges is the digital dependency these systems can generate. It's not a fringe concern. It's showing up consistently across the research.
So the benefits are real and the risks are real. And they're kind of coming from the same place. The more powerful the tool, the more it can help you and the more it can do the work for you.
That's a really clean way to put it. And I think that's why the conversation around assessment is so important right now, because assessment is where you actually find out whether learning happened.
Let's go there, because AI is changing assessment in some pretty significant ways too.
So there's a study published in the Educational Process International Journal that looked at AI in assessment across 5 universities, 300 undergraduate students, and 100 instructors. And the numbers are striking. 73% of students received faster feedback when AI was used. Instructors reported an average 40% reduction in grading time. Those are genuinely significant efficiency gains.
Okay, 40% less grading time. That's huge for instructors.
It is. But here's the catch from the same study. 52% of students did not fully understand how AI-derived scores were calculated. More than half. So you have faster feedback, but students don't know where that feedback is coming from or how to trust it. That's a transparency problem.
That's a really uncomfortable gap. Like you're being evaluated by a system you don't understand.
And researchers at MDPI published a framework specifically addressing this. They argue that AI-supported assessment in higher education needs to be structured around three stakeholders: instructors, students, and institutional control authorities. The point is that accountability has to be built in at every level, not just assumed.
And there's also the question of algorithmic bias, right? Like, if the AI was trained on certain kinds of student work, does it grade fairly across different backgrounds?
That's one of the central concerns in the research. A systematic review published in the journal Artificial Intelligence in Education found that while AI-driven grading improves efficiency, consistency, and scalability, there are real challenges around algorithmic bias and equity for low-resource students. The conclusion from that review is that an AI-human hybrid optimizes educational assessment. You need both, not one replacing the other.
I want to bring in the Georgia Tech example here because I think it's a really interesting case study in how this plays out in practice.
Yeah, Jill Watson is one of the most cited examples in this space. Georgia Tech deployed an AI teaching assistant built on IBM's Watson platform in their online Masters in Computer Science program. It was trained on over 40,000 forum posts from previous course iterations, and it was designed to automatically respond to students' frequently asked questions.
And students didn't realize they were talking to an AI for a while, right?
That's the part that really makes you think. And the impact was real. It significantly reduced response time for student queries and freed up human teaching assistants to focus on more complex student needs. So the AI handled the routine, and the humans handled the nuanced. That division of labor is actually a pretty good model for where this is all heading.
It's interesting because that model, AI for the routine, humans for the nuanced, keeps coming up. The World Economic Forum report said something similar, right? About automating clerical tasks.
Yes, the World Economic Forum's report, Shaping the Future of Learning, the Role of AI in Education 4, found that AI can automate and augment up to 20% of educator clerical tasks. And the framing there is really important. It's not about replacing teachers, it's about reducing administrative burden so teachers can spend more time on personalization, pedagogy, and supporting students' social and emotional needs.
Which is what teachers actually went into teaching to do.
Exactly. And that's why the NPR poll finding that nearly 8 in 10 teachers think schools should teach responsible AI use is so significant to me. Teachers aren't saying, get this out of our classrooms. They're saying, help us figure out how to do this right. That's a very different posture than the teachers versus technology narrative that sometimes gets pushed.
That's actually a really important reframe because the public conversation often positions teachers as resistant to change. But what you're describing is teachers who are already using these tools and asking for more guidance, not less.
Right. And the research from Frontiers in Education makes a similar point. It argues that the emergence of generative AI requires a closer integration between pedagogical methodologies and technological innovation. The technology's impact depends on how it's embedded within sound pedagogical frameworks. You can't just drop AI into a classroom and expect good outcomes.
So the tool is only as good as the framework around it.
That's the core insight. And I think it's what separates the schools and institutions that are getting this right from the ones that are struggling. It's not about which AI tool you're using, it's about whether you've thought carefully about what learning is supposed to look like and how AI fits into that.
And the US Department of Education has weighed in on this too. They published a report on AI and the future of teaching and learning that's been pretty influential in shaping how districts think about this.
They have. And the consistent message from authoritative bodies, the Department of Education, the World Economic Forum, the systematic reviews in peer-reviewed journals, is that responsible implementation is the key variable. The technology itself is not inherently good or bad for learning. It's how it's deployed, who has oversight, and whether students and teachers are equipped to use it critically.
Let me push on something though, because we've talked a lot about the potential and the frameworks and the responsible use. But there's a student sitting in a classroom right now who's just going to use ChatGPT to write their essay, and no framework is going to stop that. So, what do we actually do about that reality?
That's the honest question, and I don't think there's a clean answer. But I think Mikhail Neighbor's approach at El Toro High School is actually instructive here. She's not trying to ban the tool, she's making the tool itself the subject of study. When students have to verify what ChatGPT says against reliable sources, they're developing exactly the critical thinking skills that AI dependence threatens. You're using the problem as the lesson.
That's a really elegant solution. Turn the potential crutch into a critical thinking exercise.
And it scales. Because the skill of knowing when to trust AI and when to verify it, that's not just an academic skill. That's a life skill for anyone navigating the world right now.
Okay, so when you step back from everything we've covered, the adaptive platforms, the teacher surveys, the cognitive offloading research, the assessment data, what's the through line here?
The through line is that AI in education is not a binary choice. It's not embrace it fully or reject it. The research is pretty consistent that the benefits are real, personalized learning, faster feedback, reduced teacher workload on administrative tasks, but so are the risks, particularly around critical thinking and dependency. And the institutions that are navigating this well are the ones treating AI as a tool that requires active, thoughtful management, not a solution that runs itself.
And the systematic review of 155 studies makes that point really clearly. It says AI's success in education depends on careful implementation and collaboration among educators, researchers, and policymakers. It's not a solo project.
Exactly. And I think the most actionable thing for anyone listening, whether you're a student, a teacher, a parent, or just someone who cares about this, is to push for that transparency. Ask how AI is being used in your school or institution. Ask what the oversight looks like. Ask whether students are being taught to use it critically, not just efficiently.
Because the 52% of students who didn't understand how their AI derived scores were calculated, that's not just a data point. That's a signal that we're moving faster than our understanding.
And that gap between capability and understanding is where the real risk lives. Not in the technology itself, but in deploying it before we've built the literacy to use it well.
Here's what this really comes down to. The teachers who told NPR that AI will eclipse the internet and computers, they're probably right. But the same poll showed that nearly 8 in 10 of them think schools need to teach responsible use. Those two things together are the whole story.
The scale of the transformation is real, and so is the responsibility that comes with it. The question isn't whether AI belongs in education, it's already there. The question is whether we're building the human infrastructure to make sure it serves learning rather than shortcuts it.
And that's a question every school, every teacher, every student, and honestly every parent needs to be asking out loud right now, not waiting for someone else to figure it out.
The Oregon State researchers put it simply: education is about learning to analyze information, form hypotheses, solve problems, and think critically. If AI is doing all of that for students, then what exactly are we educating them for?
That question is going to sit with me for a while. We started this episode with teachers saying AI will be bigger than the internet, and we're ending with the question of whether the most important lesson AI can teach us is how to think without it.
Which, when you think about it, is exactly what good teachers have always been trying to do.
That's a perfect place to land. Thanks for being here, and thanks to everyone listening to Copilot Podcasts. If this episode made you think differently about what's happening in classrooms right now, share it with someone who needs to hear it. We'll see you next time.